This is Doug Payne welcoming you back to our third update of Harry's video blog series for the US Event Horse Futurity. His show name is Quiberon, and that photo really epitomizes everything that he's all about, and I had to include it. We're just wrapping up a number of horses that went earlier in the day, and Courtney was putting in the final touches, but Harry, unfazed by pretty much anything, just decided he'd take a nap while he's getting braided. So the video here, as we can see, is our dressage phase. This is from his very first competition, again at Paradise Farm in Aiken, South Carolina. Paradise ends up falling in a perfect time frame for us, and especially for these young horses developing. It ends up falling in as their first competition, and it offers a lot for them. I think there's a decent amount of atmosphere. The facility is great. They've got good rings, good courses. Cross country is exceptional in that it has a really nice rolling hills to it, and a lot of different questions that are asked in a very fair but certainly a substantial way for the level. My goal here at this competition is to come out with a much more confident, well-rounded, and sort of aware of the world horse if we could. And in order for that to happen, there's obviously three phases we've got to put together. Here in the dressage, looking to just maintain a consistent, steady tempo in a very quiet way and try to avoid any big mistakes. And frankly, with babies, mistakes are going to happen without a doubt. And so I will try to be mindful to make it a bit easier on him throughout. And so actually for the first half of the test, I'm actually keeping him just a bit off of the boards here. The PVC material, we got a little spook there, but PVC material ends up being a bit louder when the sand hits it. So again, early on, I'll try and stay a little further away, and then gradually as the test goes on, get a little braver and start riding right up against them. With Harry, I couldn't have been any happier with him at all. He's a very steady, consistent character. Bitting wise, just for reference, he's in a full cheek snaffle, and we use that for all three phases. It's actually a rubber full cheek snaffle, and so about as soft as we can manage. And my goal with the young guys is to be certainly steady and consistent with the contact, but as light as possibly can. And I think in the end that makes for everything is easier if we can pretty much just guide them with seat and leg. Harry, we're very, very lucky in that he's got three very good gaits, and I was more than happy. He got maybe a hair distracted on occasion, but he was very well focused, and being that he's still intact, I wasn't entirely sure if he would be, wanting to go hang out with his friends up the top in the warm-up or not, but he was very workmanlike, and once we were away from the crowd, he was really well focused. And in preparation for this competition, we do try to expose them to a whole lot of different experiences, and we're lucky enough to have a very busy farm. We probably have roughly 25 horses going at the moment. Maybe 40% of those are show jumpers, and the remainder are all event horses. So we do have a lot of traffic going back and forth. So all of the babies that we've got, as soon as we're able to do walk, trot, canter, and I feel like we're pretty well, the steering's pretty well installed, and we're not going to get too many really erratic moments. I do end up teaching lessons with them, either just hanging out on them, or maybe we're setting jumps and they just follow around and just sort of see the world. So if the horses come and maybe one of them has a rail or hits a fence or whatever it might be, they realize that really none of that's a big deal, and I think it pays big dividends in the warm-up, which is obviously the setup for your competition at these events, because obviously warm-up, especially with the babies, can be a bit chaotic because frankly nobody can steer, and we try to keep it heads up and avoid any sort of collisions, but I think the more that they can see, the better off they will be later on. So here we're on to show jumping, and we have now, if you had been following before, we've been now to one other jumper show, and he went 2 days in a row, so he's seen maybe 4 courses in a competitive environment. He'd certainly been off the property to other places earlier than that, but in a competitive field, probably forced. This would be the 5th time in a ring competing for real. The first couple fences, obviously he spooks off the first and he jumps it a mile high. But then really by about, 3 fences in, he starts to settle back, and very similar to the dressage, I'm just trying to really establish a very consistent, steady tempo and ultimately just a relaxed way so that he finds confidence in the fact that everything's coming up in a measured way, that nothing's really scary, and he's able to have enough time that he always can feel like he can comprehend what's happening. So as we head out onto cross country, luckily here at Paradise they actually run the show jumping first, which I do think is a pretty big advantage because it can, especially with the young guys, get them warmed up and get them going. And I think in the end they're probably a bit more familiar with the show jumping, being that they do that more often than they do go out cross country. But again, sort of first jump, a bit spooky, and here to the second, I still rode a little more defensive than later on in the course. The other thing that makes this difficult is that you're cantering away from the warm-up and away from all their friends. So that makes one extra element of difficulty here. After the second fence, he really felt like he was locked in and good, so I will try to pick, and this goes also with the show jumping, but pick the smoothest, roundest, even course or track, regardless of the orientation of the fences. So I ended up actually angling that third fence a bit from right to left, but it allowed for the smoothest manner of going, and I think in the end, if we can keep it smooth, it's a whole lot easier for them to keep their balance, and they can then jump really well out of it. Unfortunately, we didn't have video from early on, but when they do start jumping, as soon as we're jumping, or I say jumping, but even just going over poles on the ground, I do a lot of pole work, and we would introduce them to skinny poles and go at pretty good angles, be it at a walk, trot, or canter, from a very, very early age. So frankly, they never know any different, that if you put them on a line, they stay on that line regardless of what's in front of them, and given as much time as they need to comprehend what's happening. So if we canter in and they are a bit distracted, I'm very happy to allow them to drop back to a trot or frankly a walk, as long as they're still in a forward feel. So here we're coming up to the water jump, and I will use the same strategy with all of the babies. Actually school the water first, so it's actually flagged on the front edge, and we've come around the side and just gone through to get his feet wet first. I think this has a lot of advantages. I never want to make them feel as if they're rushed or pressured to continue. I want them to feel as if it's just their idea, that they feel to comprehend what's happening, figure it out, and on you go. So by schooling it, you give them a ton of time without the added pressure of getting any sort of penalty. And frankly, the time forgiving enough to give you as much time as you'd like without risking time penalties in the end. So couldn't have asked for a better first outing. Harry finished up on his dressage score of 33 and finished in 3rd place in the beginner novice this weekend. So check back in a couple weeks for our next edition, and we'll have to leave you with Courtney's final thoughts from the weekend, and couldn't have said it better myself.